Welcome everyone to another edition of the Classic Comic Archive, a series where I recap and review many of Marvel Comics' most seminal early issues. Our story for today is Fantastic Four 7, cover dated October of 1962. This issue marks the first appearance of obscure villain, Kurgo, the Master of Planet X, and was written by Stan Lee and drawn by Jack Kirby. Our issue opens up with a striking splash panel, showing a strange alien as he's relaxing on a throne, while watching the Fantastic Four through a hidden monitoring device. Apparently his name is Kurgo, and he's the king of Planet X. It's not yet clear why he's watching the Fantastic Four, but what Kurgo makes perfectly clear is that his planet is soon to be destroyed by an incoming asteroid. Unfortunately, it seems that Kurgo and his people are doomed, since evacuating the planet isn't an option. You see, even though their technology is 1,000 years more advanced than humanity's, they never really cared for space travel, and thus they've only ever built 2 spaceships. But Kurgo's not going to give up on his people. So he sends one of the spaceships, piloted by an advanced robot, to Earth, with orders for it to land and then capture the Fantastic Four, as for some reason he thinks they may be able to save his people. But before we see all that unfold, let's shift focus to the super team in question, as Mr. Fantastic's just received word that he and his teammates are due to appear in Washington, D.C. later that night, for a government dinner hosted in their honor. But upon hearing the news, both Johnny and the Thing say they don't want to go. Johnny because he's afraid he'll get nervous and accidentally burst into flame, and the Thing because he thinks he'll just be a big spectacle for a bunch of stuffy congressmen. And Sue agrees with him, as she's afraid she'll get anxious meeting so many important people, and accidentally turn invisible in front of them. Thus it seems that Reed's the only one comfortable with actually going to the dinner, but as team leader, he tells his teammates to stop their whining and start getting ready. Apparently having lost his spine, Johnny acquiesces and heads off to take a shower, but not before mockingly calling the Thing a stubborn ox. But the Thing, never one to turn the other cheek, gets back at Johnny by sneaking into his shower and cranking up the heat. The ensuing rush of hot water stings Johnny, and even startles him into flaming on. As the water then hits his fiery body, the shower, and the entire floor is engulfed in steam. Once Mr. Fantastic's made sure the building isn't on fire, he rounds up Johnny and the Thing, and scolds the latter for interrupting his work on an experimental rocket fuel. As the Thing retorts and the two enter into a bitter bickering match, let's briefly shift focus to the edge of Earth's atmosphere, as Kurgo's spaceship has finally reached its destination. But as the craft breaches the thermosphere, its entry is noticed by an American military satellite. Analyzing the data the satellite sensors receive, technicians on the ground rightly deduce that the craft's an alien spaceship. But before we see what they do about it, let's shift back to the Fantastic Four, who've just boarded the Fantasticar and are about to leave for DC. Yet just before takeoff, the Thing spots Kurgo's spaceship whizzing in the distance, although he assumes it's just an experimental missile. Thus he and his teammates don't bother to investigate it, and take off for DC. Meanwhile, the spaceships just blazed past a squadron of fighters sent to intercept it. And once out of their range, it lands in a desolate valley. Kurgo's robot then emerges from the craft carrying an atomic scanner. When he activates it, the device starts emitting a strange curling energy ray that rides about as if it's trying to decide which direction to take. And apparently it is, as guided by some strange force, it quickly locates the Fantastic Four as they're on their way to Washington. But other than a strange feeling that comes over them, the four don't notice it. Arriving at the Capitol building, the Fantastic Four nervously shamble their way into a lavish ceremony. And before they even get a chance to take a seat, they're presented with a rather gaudy golden trophy, in recognition of their many world-saving adventures. But just as it's begun, the ceremony's ruined when the robot in Kurgo's ship, which is hovering over DC, activates a hostility ray. Apparently it makes people irrationally aggressive to one another, something evidenced when a man peeks up to praise the Fantastic Four, only to then brand them the worst menaces to ever threaten America. To the Four's surprise, everyone at the ceremony agrees, and they begin angrily tossing food and utensils at them. While they don't understand what's going on, the Four know it's time to leave. But this isn't just some normal gala, it's the Capitol building. Thus a swarm of soldiers go after the Fantastic Four, although in their own way, each member's able to make it outside. Including the Thing, who bursts his way up from under the middle of a busy street, just as a mob of club-wielding pedestrians show up to clobber him. But they'll have to wait another day, as without a moment to spare, the Thing hops into the Fantasticar, and along with his teammates, gets the heck out of DC. But as they're zipping away, they're spotted by the robot in Kurgo's ship. It pursues them to the roof of their skyscraper headquarters, the Baxter Building. It then disembarks from its ship, and while menacingly towering over the Fantastic Four, it tells them its purpose, and pulls out a strange device with a video display. On the screen is live footage of a massive mob that's gathered right outside the Baxter Building. Still without any explanation of what's going on, Mr. Fantastic suggests that they just leave the country for a while. But the robot speaks up and tells them that it would be of no use, as the entire planet's now after them. He claims that if they stay on Earth, men with chemical foam will render Johnny helpless, a way will be found to confine Mr. Fantastic's powers, the Thing will be trapped in a prison of electricity, and Sue will be forced to wear a radioactive armband that'll render her powerless. But not all's lost, as the robot then offers to provide the Fantastic Four with safe passage and asylum on Planet X. Without a moment's hesitation, Mr. Fantastic speaks up and accepts the offer. Johnny and Sue agree with him, while the Thing, apparently the only one with an ounce of rationality, tries to remind his teammates that they're about to board the spaceship of an alien robot that they just met. But the rest either don't see much harm in it, or are too curious to pass up an opportunity to visit an alien planet. So they all board the robot's ship and head off for Planet X. Several hours later, the four arrive at their destination, and get pulled to the surface of an alien city by an invisible anti-gravity beam. On the ground they're greeted by Kurgo, who explains the plight of his people, as even though they've mastered unbelievable technology, they haven't any solution for the problem of the incoming asteroid. Even now, as the rock's still hurtling through space, its gravity is disrupting their planet's tides and volcanoes. The geological crisis is threatening billions, and driving fear and panic into the hearts of his people. That's where the Fantastic Four come in, as they're Kurgo's last hope in saving his planet. So Mr. Fantastic asks the obvious question, why can't Kurgo and his people just escape on spaceships? Well, as I'd mentioned earlier, the people of Planet X never had the desire to explore other worlds, and thus only possessed 2 spaceships, neither being large enough to evacuate the planet's 5 billion inhabitants. So as Mr. Fantastic tries to think up another solution, the Thing, thinking he and his teammates are doomed if they stay on Planet X, orders Kurgo's robot to take them back to Earth. But the robot's programmed to only respond to the commands of Kurgo, and thus ignores him. In frustration, the Thing tries to clobber the robot, but his punches bounce right off of it, as apparently it's made of the strongest substance in the universe. Yet even though they didn't leave a scratch, Kurgo takes offense to the Thing punching his robot, and thus orders it to pick him up and fling him across the room. Coming to the surprise aid of the Thing, Johnny flames on and begins buzzing around the robot. But knowing that his normal flame won't cut it, he decides it's time to try something he's never tried before, going supernova. Increasing his heat till it's matched that of an exploding star, Johnny then makes a beeline for the robot. Knowing that he's just going to end up frying them all, Sue jumps in front of the robot and stops her brother from destroying it. Frustrated by this wasteful tantrum, Kurgo speaks up and urges the four to just start working on a way to stop the asteroid, as they've only got 24 hours before it's going to hit. Coming to their senses, the Thing and Johnny stop their whining and, along with Reed and Sue, pledge to help in stopping the asteroid. But before they can even get started, they're suddenly rocked by a massive gravity-induced earthquake. It turns out that they've got a lot less than 24 hours, as the asteroid's approaching faster than Kurgo thought. Thus in a rather telling moment, he demands that the Fantastic Four get to work, as even though he doesn't care about them or even his own subjects, his people need to be saved if he's going to continue being their master. While he's essentially just exposed himself as a tyrant, Mr. Fantastic ignores the remark, and runs off to Kurgo's most advanced laboratory. Getting to work, and with the help of his teammates, he constructs a massive machine to save Planet X. But when he's finished, all he's got to show for it is a small gun that shoots vials of shrinking gas. Kurgo's rather confused by this, but Mr. Fantastic explains that the gun is actually the machine he'd made, it's just been shrunk. To demonstrate what it can do, Mr. Fantastic shoots a vial at a wall behind 2 volunteers. As the vial then shatters, the 2 volunteers inhale its gas, and shrink to 1,000th of their normal size. Mr. Fantastic then explains that he can re-enlarge the gun, and fire it all across Planet X. Thus they won't need to build more ships, but simply evacuate the shrunken population on one that they already have. Then once they've landed on a new homeworld, they can simply release a vial of enlarging gas and return everyone to normal. Satisfied with this plan, Kurgo finally gives the Fantastic Four his permission to leave the planet. So the four start making their way back to the ship that they came in, but run into trouble when a massive chasm suddenly appears in front of them. And worse yet, it spewed up a mighty boulder that's about to crush them. But the team can always count on the strength of the Thing, as he amazingly catches the boulder, and then tosses it into the chasm. So with their path clear, Mr. Fantastic then stretches his body into a makeshift bridge, and ushers his teammates across it. On the other side they quickly board their ship and then take off into space. Back on Planet X, Mr. Fantastic's plan is in full effect. And if you were wondering how 5 billion people would be wrangled into one spot, well, Kurgo's activated shuttle ships that have been ferrying citizens from across the planet to the launch site. Yet it seems that he's the only one who hasn't boarded yet, as he's struggling to carry the only vial of enlarging gas to the launch site. You see, when he and his people settle on a new planet, he's planning on only using the gas on himself, that way he'll be a giant compared to his subjects, and he can continue ruling them as if they were insects. But the vial is a large and unwieldy thing, and with it slowing him down, he doesn't reach the launch site in time. Thus his people are forced to leave without him, and thereby strand him on a doomed world. The issue subsequently ends as Sue questions if there was really enough enlarging gas for so many people, to which Mr. Fantastic reveals that there never was any enlarging gas. He said there was, just to get Kurgo on board with his plan. But the way he sees it, it won't matter anyways, as they're still all the same size, and in the vastness of our universe, size is only relative. That concludes Fantastic Four 7, and another episode of the Classic Comic Archive. But as always, I would like to offer a brief review of this issue. Overall, I thought that this was a wacky fun story. While it really didn't do anything innovative, I found it to be a charmingly silly little adventure. It seems Stan and Jack didn't take themselves too seriously with this issue, and that's something I can really appreciate. Across all of modern media, there's definitely been a shift to the darker side of things. While those stories have their place, it's important to remember that these harmlessly wacky ones still do too. But in any case, let me know what you thought of this issue and the video, and feel free to suggest other classic comics for me to cover. Thanks for watching.